Please be seated. Who has made God real to you? Who are the people in your life, the folks you've known, who you've encountered along the way, who have made God real to you? As I think about that for myself, one of the names that comes to mind is not someone who I met once in passing, but who has had such a deep impact on me and on the church as a whole. Someone who died last night. Archbishop Desmond Tutu, the former Archbishop of South Africa, who was ordained a priest in the 1960s, who was born and raised and ordained and served out most of his ministry in apartheid-era South Africa. He died peacefully at 90. And his legacy rings out through the current day South Africa as well as the church as a whole. He struggled against the apartheid regime for 30 years. He was ordained as the Archbishop of South Africa, the first black man to serve in that role, and continued throughout his whole life and work to seek the liberation of his people, the black residents of South Africa, and to lead a lengthy, difficult, heartbreaking truth and reconciliation process, not just for his people, for black South Africans, but for all South Africans. He held on to this vision of a unified South Africa, of one that could not just elide over what had happened in the past, but move through it with truth and honesty, that they can move into a new era, a new day for his country, one that was marked by peace, by cohabitation between people of all races, beyond just this idea of mere tolerance, but to build a true society in which all have a seat at the table. And he was one who wasn't afraid to call out anyone and everyone, that he was constantly stirring the pot, that he was the first person to host Nelson Mandela when he was released from prison, to welcome him back into a position of power in South Africa. And he called out the mostly white South African government that would eventually yield in order to see the end of apartheid come about. But he also wasn't afraid to call out the later presidents, folks who were on the surface seen that he would have the most in common with. And while he may have, that he was never afraid to call them out for ways that they weren't living up to the promises that they had given to their people. He was a prophetic figure. He was one who brought light into the world in the midst of darkness. He made God real to so many millions of South Africans and other Christians and non-believers around the world. His life and legacy is truly remarkable. If you don't know that much about him, I encourage you to look him up, look up the things that he has written. He wrote an entire book on the practice of forgiveness, the very real practice of it, not just as an idea, but something that he lived out through these painful processes of hearing people talking about the horrors that they had experienced under apartheid, encourage them and help them to move forward. He also wrote what he calls his Book of Joy, along with the Dalai Lama, which is yet this other place where he was willing to reach across divisions, on this point, divisions of religion, in order to find common ground, in order that he and others might see themselves as part of one human family. He made God real to so many people. Despite all the challenges that he faced, he did it also with a sense of joy, with this overwhelming sense that God was present, that God desired justice, desired peace, desired wholeness, desired joy for God's people. Throughout his ministry was marked by this infectious laughter, in a way that he had moving through spaces that was so disarming to people. I remember the one encounter I had with him. I was in college, and he had come to be a baccalaureate speaker for a graduation of a couple classes above me. And I had the privilege of working in the chapel, and so I was back in the sacristy, helping set out the silver and the vestments and everything. And he made a point to stop, to say hello to all of us, to thank us for our service, to express gratitude for us being there. This giant of the church always took time to reach out to others, to spread that light of God's love, the light of joy in knowing Jesus Christ and knowing God. He spread that to others, to everyone, to so many who he encountered. And so today, as we read this gospel from John about the Word becoming flesh, the light coming into the world and not being overcome by the darkness, I can think of no greater figure to honor, to commemorate, to remember, to hold, lift up than Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And I'm sure all of us have those people in our lives who have made God real to us. Those who we only knew from afar, but also those very near us. Parents, spouses, children, aunts, uncles, relatives, friends, mentors, teachers. The list could go on and on. I just invite you this week, this day, as you think about the light that came into the world, think about those people. Remember those people who brought light into your world, who were the light shining in the darkness, who the darkness didn't overcome. I encourage you, as you remember them, as you think about what it is that they did or how they had such a powerful impact on you, also reflect on how you've been the light to others. How have you brought joy into the lives of others? And I know that may be the harder thing to reflect on. I think there's this tendency to not want to focus on ourselves and our own actions, our own, to boost ourselves up. But I think it's important to have a realistic perception of what we have done, of who we've been to other people, to understand how God's light, how God's love has been made real in and through us. Because it's through those patterns of recognizing that light and love in other people and in ourselves, that we come to know it more deeply, more fully. And that we carry that then forward into the present moment and into the rest of our lives, knowing what it means to breathe light in this world. For God made flesh in the person of Jesus to live on in us. At the end of the day, that is what we are called to. That's what the gospel calls us to be God's light in the world, to be Jesus made flesh, to be God made flesh here and now, in our families, in our homes, in our communities, and throughout our lives. On this day, may we carry the blessed memory of Archbishop Desmond Tutu with us. May we carry his joy in our hearts, his laughter. May we be light in this world.